Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You're watching India Tonight with me, Sumita Kareer. Our top story, well, Sri Lankan President Kumara Dissanayake is on a three-day state visit to India. This is President Dissanyake's first foreign trip after he assumed office in September. Now, this also underscores the importance that he attaches to India-Sri Lanka ties. In fact, after meeting with the Prime Minister, he assured that his country won't allow its land to be quote-unquote used in any way in a manner that is detrimental to the interests of India. Dissanayake also thanked India for supporting Sri Lanka during its economic crisis. He said, and I quote, "We faced an unprecedented economic crisis some 2 years ago and India supported us immensely to come out of that quagmire," he said. Prime Minister Modi then welcomed Dissanayake to India and he said, and I quote, "We are delighted that as the President, you chose India for your first foreign state visit. With today's yatra, the new speed and energy is being generated in our relations," unquote. So let's take a quick look at what the Premier said and then we'll take this discussion across to our guests who are joining us tonight on what the ties really look like going forward and can India really try and limit and curb China's influence on Sri Lanka. But let's take a quick look at the bites that are coming in on what the Prime Minister and of course President Dissanayake said during a joint press briefing.
And I have always also given an assurance to the Prime Minister of India that we will not allow our land to be used in any way in a manner that is detrimental to the interest of India. The cooperation of India will certainly flourish. And I want to reassure our continued support for India.
पूरी तरह सहमत है कि हमारे सुरक्षा हित एक दूसरे से जुड़े हैं। हमने रक्षा सहयोग समझौते को शीघ्र अंतिम रूप देने का निर्णय लिया है। हाइड्रोग्राफी पर भी सहयोग की सहमति बनी है। हम मानते हैं कि कोलंबो सिक्योरिटी कॉन्क्लेव क्षेत्रीय शांति, सुरक्षा और विकास के लिए अहम प्लेटफॉर्म है। इसके अंतर्गत मैरीटाइम सिक्योरिटी, काउंटर टेररिज्म, साइबर सिक्योरिटी, तस्करी और ऑर्गेनाइज्ड क्राइम के खिलाफ लड़ाई, ह्यूमैनिटेरियन असिस्टेंस एंड डिजास्टर रिलीफ जैसे विषयों पर सहयोग बढ़ाया जाएगा। फ्रेंड, भारत और श्रीलंका के पीपल टू पीपल संबंध हमारी सभ्यताओं से जुड़े हैं।
All right, so the Prime Minister touching upon the various areas of cooperation that are likely to be extended so far as the ties between the two nations are concerned, and of course of that security, trade and investment are going to be the key pillars. Let's take this discussion forward with our guests who are joining us tonight, Jayant Dasgupta, former ambassador and representative of India to the WTO, and Ashok Sajjanhar, former ambassador. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us this evening on ET Now. Let me come to you first, Mrs. Sajjanhar. Talk to us about the significance of this visit by President Dissanayake, given that this is the first visit after he assumed office. Also, he visited India in February, wherein he stated, and I quote, that even though we may possess independent capabilities, strong international relations, particularly with India, are dispensable in navigating the current crisis. He was, of course, referring to the economic crisis. Help us understand this in context of countering the growing Chinese influence and, of course, JVP's past policies.
Thank you very much. These are very many questions that you have posed, Sumita. So let me come to, first the JVP's past policies. They have been very opposed to India in the past. It has been a sort of a terrorist organization. They carried out terrorist attacks in 1971, in 1989. Many hundreds of people lost their lives. They were viscerally opposed to India's engagement, involvement in any way as far as the IPKF, the Indian peacekeeping force in Sri Lanka, was concerned. So for him to sort of, number one, to win the presidential election in September this year, and then to have a emphatic and decisive victory in the parliament elections after that, I think he has completely changed the map of Sri Lankan politics. As far as his coming to India, it has to be viewed as far as India is concerned, seeing that there is a huge turbulence in our neighborhood. We see what is happening in Bangladesh. We don't know what is going to be the end. No end in sight is visible at the moment. In Maldives, what happened at the end of last year, we have started mending relations. So, in that context, and in the context of the incertitude and the uncertainty that is there as far as the world is concerned, this is a very important relationship for us. We've been looking normally to the north, our relations with China, to the west, relations with Pakistan, but this relation in the south is very important because it is the linchpin of our neighborhood first policy as well as of our Sagar policy. And, I think credit to the Indian government.
Absolutely.
No stone was left unturned. It was a red carpet treatment all the way to President Anura Dissanayake, and I'm delighted at this very detailed, comprehensive final declaration that has come out, which will take our relationship to newer heights. Sumita.
Yes, absolutely. Ambassador Sajjanhar, in fact, India has been making those gestures even before he assumed office. Like I said, he visited the country earlier, and then, of course, the High Commission was the first one in Sri Lanka to congratulate him after he assumed office. Mr. Dasgupta, strong words really coming in from Mr. Sajjanhar. Now, the question is, can India trust Sri Lanka as an ally, and if so, to what extent? Because there are their own domestic and political compulsions as well.
Well, as far as trust is concerned, I think President Dissanayake has made the first move by not going to China, but to come to India on his first foreign visit. That itself is a very, very strong message sent to the rest of the world and to China as well. The second thing is that President Dissanayake has mentioned on more than one occasion during his visit the debt of gratitude that Sri Lanka owes to India, not only because of its civilizational and old cultural ties, centuries and millennia old ties, but the crisis since 2022, when India bailed it out with food aid, with about $4 billion worth of lines of credit as well as grants. And by writing off many lines of credit with grants. So that proved to be a kind of a huge gesture from India, which has been duly acknowledged by President Dissanayake. As far as trust is concerned, each country will look at its own self-interest. And we have shown, both the countries have shown that they would like to deepen their cooperation in security matters, in defense matters, in logistics, of course, and India, UAE, and Sri Lanka could have a three-way partnership for gas and petroleum products, because that is one of the products which is traded principally between Sri Lanka and India. So with the deepening of the relationship, I think the trust also will grow.
Sir.
And mind you, there are 100,000 tourists going to Sri Lanka every year from India. India is the largest supplier of tourists to Sri Lanka, and Sri Lankan economy is heavily dependent on tourism. So there are the ties are getting deeper, and I think there is no reason why we should distrust Sri Lanka. It can only get better from here, but we will have to be very, careful about each other's sensitivities and also concerns. Especially,
absolutely,
I think in terms of the Hambantota port, the Colombo port, etc.
Yes, yes. Yes. And Ambassador, this is something that has been said today by the President as well. And like I was saying, that when he was visiting India in February as well, he made that statement that even though we may possess independent capabilities, strong international relations with India are indispensable in navigating the current crisis. So this is something that he's reiterated in February. He's reiterated that today as well. And of course, taken into consideration India's security concerns as well. Now, on the point on China, Ambassador Sajjanhar, I want to understand from you, because Sri Lanka also wants to maintain its ties with China, given the kind of bailouts that were given by China, and of course it was given by India as well. And Dissanayake, like I was saying, has earlier stated that both are valued partners. So how will Dissanayake really handle China and balance the ties between the two countries?
Okay, if you permit, Sumita, I'll just add one or two points to what we were discussing earlier, and then I'll come to China, if you don't mind. Number one is Anura Dissanayake has followed the practice of his predecessors. All his predecessors have always made India to be the first country of, the foreign visit after they have been elected. Second, India has been very proactive in reaching out, under its neighborhood first policy. You would remember that he was elected in September. In October, Dr. Jaishankar was the first foreign leader to go there and to meet him, to call on him, give him this letter of invitation from Prime Minister Modi, as a result of which he has come here. He also, many of the loans that were given, many of the letters of lines of credit that were given, they were changed to grants. So I think everything has been set right. Now, coming as far as China is concerned, many of our neighbors will try to use both China and India. Let us, be quite, open about it, that, China is a big economic power, and, whether it is Southeast Asia or in our vicinity also, all these countries will try to take the maximum advantage and maximum benefit of China. They have engaged in the Belt and Road Initiative as far as China is concerned. They will get investments from there. But I think they also recognize that it was India which came to their help and support in 22, when they had no energy, when they had no food, when they had no medicine, when they had no oil, gas, anything. So India is a reliable partner.
Right.
India is a partner which extends assistance without conditionality. India is a partner which will help in development cooperation according to the needs of that particular country. So I think India has great strengths to it. And of course, India is the first responder, being in the neighborhood. India is the first responder.
Yes.
So they will associate, they will connect with China, but they will make sure that they do not do anything that is inimical to the interests of India. And that is what President Dissanayake has said in his press statement, and also it is reflected in the joint declaration that has been issued today.
Right. Right. Let me take that point across to you, Ambassador Dasgupta. Now, how will this visit really be seen by China, given the kind of investments that the country has in Sri Lanka? And of course, like I was mentioning, that Sri Lanka also reaffirmed its financial support to China, reaffirmed its financial support to Sri Lanka with to cover about $4.2 billion of its outstanding debt. So how will this visit really be seen by China?
Well, China will definitely try to deepen its economic interests in Sri Lanka. And through that, they would like to further their interest of encircling India, and also to have a very strong presence in the Indian Ocean. Because ultimately, if you look at the US's initiatives in trying to have a very strong presence in the Pacific, and to control the Malacca Straits, and to have this India, US, Australia, Japan, quad. So China will definitely try to counter that by extending its influence and deepening its influence over Sri Lanka. It will provide a lot of financial assistance, but the Chinese assistance normally doesn't come in the form of grants. It is normally in the form of long-term loans. And that is where I think Ambassador Sajjanhar also mentioned, India has converted many of its lines of credit to grants. That is, just written off and the money given. So that it will be an edge that India will have. The second point is that India, the role it played in 2022, I think the Sri Lankan people, for one, have not forgotten it. And two, the ones who are discerning also know that a large part of the crisis that Sri Lanka faced was on account of its huge debt, mounting debt to China. It was not only in terms of giving away
Yes.
Hambantota port on a 99-year lease and various other things, but indebtedness beyond its means and to repay, that was mainly on account of its large bill, which was raised by the Chinese
Right.
infrastructure construction. So I think
Right.
China will make
Right.
inroads.
Right.
We have to tackle that, and we have to provide our own, set of incentives, set of uh, help.
Yes. Yes, Ambassador. Yes, Ambassador Dasgupta, in fact, today, which is why the Prime Minister, in fact, India also announced several areas of partnership. It includes digital, it includes energy, it includes maritime trade and security, includes trade and investment, and of course, several other pillars like grants and education and skilling as well. But Ambassador Sajjanhar, with what's been discussed today, will India be able to limit China's influence, and to what extent?
Yes, I am quite sanguine that India will be able to limit China's influence, because I think Sri Lanka will also remember that in 22, when, Sri Lanka really had its back to the wall, it was in a corner, then which was the country that came to its support? And, there are also these imperatives of being neighbors. India is a large neighbor. India is a large country, large economy, fifth largest economy, going to be the third largest economy, rapidly advancing. And I think the information that has been coming out as far as investments under the Belt and Road initiative of China is that, it leads to debt trap. And Sri Lanka has witnessed that in Hambantota, having given a 99-year long lease. Also, it is non-transparent. Many of the projects are non-economically viable. They are not ecologically sustainable. There's a lot of corruption that is involved in this. So I think keeping all this in mind, definitely, the very emphatic message that the Prime Minister has given, that we will always be there. We are a trusted partner. We are for your interests, we will always work towards it. I think these are the messages. This is not only words. These are also in deed. Also, we have said that to take our trade economic cooperation forward, ETCA, Economic and Technological Cooperation Agreement,
Right.
that is going to be signed. Also, the Colombo Security Conclave. I'd just like to mention that, because
Right.
that was signed in August. That is before President Dissanayake was elected. So, he could also have
assumed
said,
office.
like many leaders say, that, whatever has been done by my predecessor, that is not good enough, and I'm going to change it. But in this document, in the final declaration, it is mentioned that Colombo Security Conclave, that we will take it forward, and it meets the security interests of both the countries.
Okay. 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 Ambassador Dasgupta, now we've spoken about, the synergies between the two countries and how, relationship between the two nations could be normalized soon. But what do you think could be some roadblocks and hiccups? The arrest of fishermen from both, countries inadvertently trespassing into each other's waters. Would you say that that's a minor hiccup? And if you could also talk about the larger challenges or the larger hassles that you see in ties between the two nations.
I think the fisheries issue is, something which can be solved. There would be unwitting, crossing of each other's maritime boundaries, because in the high seas, it is very difficult to, really demarcate anything. So that kind of a thing, I don't think is a very serious issue, unless the Coast Guard gets into the picture with weapons, and the Sri Lankan Navy comes in. That used to happen at the peak of the tensions between India and Sri Lanka, or the way back 3 decades, more than 3 decades back. But now that is all past history. So these are very small, I think, minor irritants. On the other side, I think what will be a difficult thing to do will be about real investments flowing from India to Sri Lanka to rebuild their economy apart and diversify it beyond tourism. Of course, tourism also will call for a lot of infrastructural investments, which India can help with. But other infrastructure and industries, that is what is crying out in Sri Lanka. So India, I think, will try its level best, but there are limitations. And in that context,
Right.
I think the port which India is helping build, and Sri Lanka has provided full support to
Right.
the port project, that is something
Right.
which is
Right.
a harbinger of things to come.
Absolutely. And Ambassador, when you talk about the port project, when you talk about the railway project, India has made those announcements and, of course, expressed that commitment to also build infrastructure in the country. But Ambassador Sajjanhar, let me come to the point that you were mentioning earlier in the show. When you look at the larger neighborhood story playing out, given what we've seen happening in Pakistan, Bangladesh, the optics of this visit are extremely crucial. And do you think that this will pave for normalization of relations with those countries as well? We've seen normalization has also been attempted with Maldives and now with Sri Lanka.
Yeah, I think, with Maldives, as I said, we started on a very bad note, a very bad wicket. It was an India out campaign. And you would recall that President Moizu, his visit to India was eighth, visit. He'd visited 7 other countries. He'd been to Turkey, he'd been to UAE, he'd been to China, and so many other countries. And then he decided to come to India. But then after that, I think, as I mentioned, as I used that phrase, the imperatives of neighborhood and imperatives of interdependency, I think they came very quickly to the Maldives, because they were also facing a lot of problem as far as their restructuring of their debt is concerned, as far as the monies that they owed to India. So they came around very quickly. And Sri Lanka, that is why, I said, you look at the not only the substantive aspects, Sumita, but also look at the body language, the optics of the visit. You've been showing
Yes.
those images when President Dissanayake is going, Prime Minister Modi is putting
Yes.
his arm around him, in a very friendly gesture. And so I think,
Yes.
for the Prime Minister to have a banquet for him at lunch, and for the President to have a banquet at dinner, I think this is really, doing something very, very special. And in terms of, I don't think I've seen any bilateral declaration or agreement that is as comprehensive as the one that I've seen today, that has been issued by the two sides. And, the details it goes to in
Right.
terms of, what Ambassador Dasgupta
Absolutely.
was saying, in terms of infrastructure construction, development cooperation, in terms of
Absolutely.
helping education, students, skill development. I think it's across the board, and it definitely is going to have its impact. I don't know whether your question was whether will it have any impact on Bangladesh or not. I'm not very certain. I think in Bangladesh, the issues are very different, and they really need to men put their own house in order, and then only they'll be able to see
Right.
where their benefits
Right.
lie.
Right, Ambassador. Right, Ambassador Sajjanhar, but now there is news that, of course, elections will be held in the country in 2025. So we can expect some sort of order and normalcy and perhaps restoring of relations and ties with India as far as Bangladesh is concerned. Thank you very much to both of you for joining us and sharing your thoughts on this crucial story.
If you like this video, then like, share and subscribe to ET Now.